Hi guys, I didn't want you to fall behind, so I wanted to make a video in case you've been gone or absent for any reason. I don't know if it'll let me present in this mode. We will see. Nope. Okay. It won't. Okay. So we'll just discuss. Let's review carbohydrates if it'll let me. Let me see here. Okay. Here we go. So a review of carbohydrates are just what's the point of them? The point is that they are the key and main source of energy for your body. What is a monomer? A monomer is the building block, the tiny Lego piece that makes a Lego castle, and the tiny Lego that builds the big carbohydrate. The tiny Lego is a simple sugar. There are many simple sugars. Glucose is an amazing example. Fructose is another example that we spoke about in class. Okay, mono means one, and saccharine is sugar, and so it's one sugar or a single sugar. So glucose is made up of a single sugar, and then fructose is also made up of a single sugar. When you get to di, that stands for two, and saccharine is still sugars, so that's two sugars. So when you put two monosaccharides together, you get a disaccharide, and examples are maltose, sucrose, and lactose. Maltose you should be familiar with. They put in lots of things, but Whoppers, the candy, not the burger, the candy, or if you go to Brahms and you want to order a milkshake, your friend might order a malt. Basically, they're the same thing, except in the malt, they put malt powder or malt sugar. You tend to either really like malts and the malt flavoring a lot, or you really don't. Those of us who do not like it tend to describe it as tasting like chalk, if you're curious. So sucrose is just table sugar. Why do we call it table sugar? It's what we use to bake with. If you're going to have sweet tea, the sugar in your sweet tea is going to be sucrose. If you're going to bake a cake, it's going to be sucrose. People used to have little sugar cubes that they would put in hot tea. It's very British. So anyway, that's called sucrose. Lactose is milk sugar. There are lactose intolerant people, and that is not necessarily the same thing as an allergy. What it means is they do not have the enzyme lactase, that's ASE, to break down lactose. And so in that way, they just have a reaction that is not awesome, but isn't deadly to lactose. Let's see here. Oops. Poly means many, and saccharine is sugar, so it's many sugars. So these are sugars that are many chains long. So hundreds or thousands of sugars long. And examples of those in our diet would be starches. Now, what's an example of a starch? That's your pasta, your bread, your potatoes. To some degree, even a banana. You would think a banana would fall under fructose, but it actually behaves more like a potato in its makeup. So a starch is, when would you need that? So let's go back. When would you need a monosaccharide? If you have an exam or an event coming up in an hour and you need just a little energy boost, you would want to eat fruit. So apples, oranges, clementines, pears, things like that. Even berries would be a great boost, particularly citrus fruits and things like that. Okay, now if you had an event tomorrow and you were going to have to work out all day tomorrow for hours and hours, then you would want to carb load tonight. So tonight for dinner, you would want to eat pastas and breads or potatoes. And what that does is it fills you full of polysaccharides so that tomorrow you can karate chop those bonds one at a time all day long. And so you'll have a little bit of energy released to you throughout all of your day tomorrow. This is very common in swimmers and runners. They carb load the night before. Let me think about anything else. If you have a soccer tournament or a softball tournament or something of that nature, then you might want to carb load. But unless you're playing in like a long event situation, carb loading is not necessary unless you're going to be going all day long tomorrow. You would not want to carb load for an event you have later today. So let's say right now when I'm making this, it's about 4:30. Let's say I had a softball game at 6. I would not want to carb load starch right now. That would make me very sleepy. It would kind of overpower my body with digestive stuff it needed to do. And so it actually would be detrimental to my performance. It would be bad for my performance tonight if I had a game. Now, some words of advice from a former athlete. Some people complain that apples make their stomach cramp, like literal like muscle cramp. And so it's not always true, but some people do complain of that. And so that's something you would want to know in advance if that happens to you. So that's why I recommend the citrus fruits, because no one has complained of having that kind of reaction to citrus fruits. It's just mainly apples. I still like apples, so whatever. Okay. Let me go to lipids. Okay, lipids. So lipids are fats, waxes, and oils. What's the point? The point of fat, the point of lipids in general, is to store energy like a battery. So in animals, particularly hibernating animals, you can really see them put on a lot of fat, like literal thick layers of fat. Animals that live in polar environments would also have this same sort of reaction. And instead of hibernating, they want to put on fat because fat is an insulator against cold. So the thicker the fat layer, the less likely you are to freeze to death at like the North Pole, right? Or the South Pole. So if you think about a penguin, they will have a thick layer of fat, or if you go to the North Pole and you want to think about seals or polar bears or things like that, thick layers of fat there. And that's an insulator. Now, bears that hibernate, that don't live in frigid temperatures, why do they do it? Well, if you're going to sleep or semi-sleep for months, you're not able to go get food. And so what happens is you have these fat reserves, and so you build those up to burn through as a calorie while you are not able to get food. Okay, monomers. This is the only one that has 2 monomers. It has glycerol and fatty acids. More on that later, but that's pretty much all I need you to know for now. Where do you find lipids the most? They make up your cell membrane of every cell in your body. And so what you will see when we get to cells soon is that I will talk about a phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid means it has phosphorus, so phosphate, and lipids, as we are talking about now. And what they do is they make a bilayer, so 1 layer, and then times 2. Bi is 2, so it makes another layer. So it's just a double layered cell. That's all. Okay, examples are fats, oils, steroids, waxes, saturated and unsaturated fats. Lipids are nonpolar. That's not really of any use to you right now. When we get to water, we'll talk about polarity and non-polarity. Okay, other things. Hormones in general are lipids. So that means your testosterone, your estrogen, progesterone, all of that goes under lipids because it's an oil. It's also a steroid. Anyway, we'll get there. So the things that you eat at this point are probably butter and then all the oils. So vegetable oils or coconut oil. What were some others that we talked about today? Peanut oil is what Chick-fil-A uses. That's what they fry their food in. Lots and lots of oils. Now, what is a saturated versus unsaturated fat? That's not something you have to know for the test or anything like that. But in case you're curious, the best way to tell if something is saturated is if it is a solid at room temperature. If it is a solid at room temperature like butter, it is a saturated fat. If it is a liquid at room temperature, it is an unsaturated fat. So like canola or vegetable oil is an unsaturated fat. In general, unsaturated fats have been connected with lower rates of heart disease than saturated fats. And so that's why those are typically recommended to you. All right, moving on to proteins. Okay, proteins, what's the point? Proteins are very important for your structure, meaning that they make everything you have pretty much that isn't like bone or, well, even part of your blood, now that I think about it, they do make up. So they make up everything that you have. So the monomer, the tiny Lego building block, is amino acids. There are 20 that exist. You only need 8 for survival. You don't have to know that. Okay, so what do they do? 1, antibodies, fights off infection. Hemoglobin, 2, is in your bloodstream and it carries the oxygen for you. Hormones, now, Ingle, I thought you said that some hormones were lipids. Some hormones are lipids. Others, like insulin and growth hormone, are linked to proteins. And then enzymes speed up chemical reactions so that your digestion takes hours instead of days. So a snake only eats about once a week. And that's because it doesn't have a ton of enzymes. Humans have many, many, many enzymes, and thus our digestion is every couple hours. So it makes our life very different than the life of a snake. My only spiel is all people need protein in whatever form you choose, whether it be plant-based or animal-based protein. Just please consume protein. Okay, nucleic acids. These are real easy, real fast. So what's the point? They make all of your DNA, genetic info, period. Examples, DNA and RNA. We will not talk about RNA very much until January, but if you have questions about it, feel free to email me. Monomers, tiny Legos. These are nucleotides. We will look at these in great detail in January. You cannot absorb this from a food source. So why not? Well, first of all, that would make you part cow, part wheat, and part whatever. Let's say you had a burger with like lettuce and mustard or whatever. You would have part wheat from the bun. You would have part sesame. If you had sesame seeds, you would be part cow. And then you would be part mustard, which is a plant. What else was on there? If you had lettuce, you would be part lettuce. Like that would be very detrimental. You wouldn't be a human anymore. You would constantly be in between all of these things. So you do not absorb this from food. Now, here's what I'll say. You do absorb the chemical elements that make this from food. So you still are getting that carbon, that hydrogen, that oxygen, that nitrogen, and that phosphorus from the food. But what you're using it for is to make and repair your own DNA as you're growing and creating new cells every couple days. Anyway, you have a bunch of stuff in your packet. You have stuff that looks like this. I need you to fill that out. I will post on Google Classroom all the pages you are responsible for. If you have any questions at all, just email me and I will try my best to get back to you. I'll see you soon.